We've all heard the story about there being no room at the inn. Indeed, this is what our English Bibles say. But in the original Greek, the language in which the New Testament was written, the word kataluma, translated as inn, doesn't necessarily mean a motel. It's only used a few times in the Bible and elsewhere. It means upper room or guest room. The famous Last Supper took place in Kataluma. In fact, there's a different Greek word for inn that does mean a motel or paid lodging, but it isn't used, though the same Gospel writer uses it in a story of the Good Samaritan a few chapters later. First century homes often had a main room on the ground floor where the family lived and an upper room or guest room where people who needed lodging could stay. It was a great shame in the Middle East to refuse hospitality to someone in need. There's a good chance that if there was no room in the guest room, it's because it was already occupied. This changes the whole story we've come to celebrate. Rather than arriving in Bethlehem only to find a local motel with no vacancy, Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem and sought lodging at a family member's house. This would be a natural thing to do in the Middle Eastern culture, because people were returning to their ancestral homes for the census. Other family members had already arrived and were occupying the guest room. There is no mention of a stable in the Bible's stories of the first Christmas. A stable is assumed because we're told that they laid him in a manger. A manger is an animal's feeding trough. If there was a manger, it must have been in a stable or perhaps a cave where the animal stayed. But this is where we might be wrong. As previously mentioned, there is a good chance that Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem, Joseph's hometown, and sought lodging at a family member's house. The guest room was full, but it would have been a great shame to turn away someone in need, especially a relative with a pregnant wife. Many families had mangers inside their homes where young animals would be safe and warm. Some of them were built into the floor of the peasant homes or occupied a small room on the main floor. Since the guest room was full, Mary and Joseph were likely offered the manger, and it was there that the mother of Jesus gave birth. Rather than being turned away by a crusty old innkeeper and given lodging in a dirty barn, Mary and Joseph were probably in a relative's home, surrounded by loved ones, when Jesus was born and laid in a manger. In our Western reading of the Christmas story, we get the impression that Mary and Joseph made it to Bethlehem just in the nick of time, and that Mary gave birth that very night. The truth is probably far less dramatic. The actual account of the first Christmas reads, "And it came to pass that when they were there, her days were accomplished, that she should be delivered, and she brought forth her firstborn son." The phrase that her days were accomplished is linked to when they were there. This implies that they had been there for a period of time before she gave birth. Just as Rome wasn't built in a day, a Roman census wasn't completed in a day. There would have had to have been time for all members of a family to travel the distance required for them to return to their ancestral homes to be counted. There would have been lines and waiting, not unlike our present-day elections. The reality is that Mary and Joseph were likely in Bethlehem for an extended period of time, both before and after she gave birth. The three wise men are a staple in almost every nativity scene, each carrying a gift for the newborn king. Standing beside the shepherds, Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus, they complete the story of the first Christmas. The biblical account says, "And entering into the house, they found a child with Mary, his mother." Notice two things about this statement. First, the wise men found the family in a house, not a stable. Quite possibly, they were still living with their family in Bethlehem at the time, or in a house that they had since rented. Second, they found a child. The Greek word used is paidion, which means toddler, not brephos, or baby. It's also worth noting that after the wise men deceived King Herod by returning a different way, he had all of the children in the vicinity who were 2 years old and younger slaughtered. These facts point to Jesus being a toddler and the wise men having visited him 1 or 2 years after his birth. So that's it for today's Christmas special. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Until the next video, goodbye.